every time you process an emotion, every time you metabolize emotion, every time you sit in the uncomfortableness of it without trying to fix it and change it and repress it and deny it, every time you allow yourself to feel it, it doesn't just help you. It does help you greatly, but it helps everyone around you. So if you are someone who wants to do better in this world, that is where you start.
Our guest today is Christina Brinkley. She, like Richard Martini and David Hanzel, will be a recurring guest where I get to spotlight her gifts and messages from her spirit guides one time monthly. Christina and her gifts are truly miraculous. She is an intuitive guide who has studied various types of healing over the past 20 years. And by the way, we already had an episode with her, so scroll and you will find it. It was really spectacular. She has developed a healing process that best translates to a soul journey. During a soul journey, Christina works with individuals to help them release limiting beliefs, programs, and resistance that may be holding them back from living their best life. Through deeply transformative work, Christina guides clients to recall their authentic self so they can move more easily through the world from a place of integrity and wholeness. With great success, she has been able to help people through all different stages of life transitions, everything from health, career, loss, relationships, and more. Welcome back, Christina.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's so wonderful to have you. I was really excited about today. And we were just chatting, and I was saying, what's up? This first episode of your recurring episodes, and you mentioned past lives. So I'm going to hand it over to you and your guides to share why that feels meaningful right now.
So, past lives are such an interesting topic because I'll tell you my journey and how I experienced past life healings. Years ago, I was very curious about a past life. People talk about their past lives. People want to explore it. I found that people really loved like finding out the interesting things that they've done and explored and different people they were. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll look into that. So I found a healer that offered a past life session, and I did the session with her. And the way that she worked through the session is she kind of led me to tap into my own. So she kind of brought me into like a very meditative state. And then I started seeing and remembering things of my past. I am interested in trying anything in the energetic world. I'm very open and excited to explore. So I found someone that was saying how by going back and remembering your past lives, it heals a piece of you. And so I was like really excited about this. I was like, whoa, this is going to be a game changer. So I signed up for her process, and her process was interesting. She dropped me into a deep meditative state, and then I was able to see and remember aspects of my past life. Nothing interesting. Like I was very confused what I was supposed to be getting out of it. And I remember ending the session feeling like, what was that? That was why I wasn't okay. Like, who cares? Like that, I left thinking no one needs to know anything about their past life. That was a waste of my time. So
Interesting.
then skip ahead and I do my soul journeys. And in my soul journeys, they're all kind of guided by the person I'm working with. And over time, I've developed very specific themes. I found that there's certain themes in which we work in that can really pluck up the energies that help people in their daily life. So I'll have a focus around the subconscious beliefs. And we'll really just dive deep into someone's subconscious beliefs. And then I'll have one on their ancestors, maybe what their ancestors believed. Maybe that's something they're still carrying in their system. And then I have different ones for different maybe childhood, maybe things that happened in your childhood. So we'll kind of narrow down and focus. What I found that was happening is throughout those sessions, I was suddenly getting pulled into people's past lives because it's all connected.
Yep.
So you might have a subconscious belief that is connected to something that happened in your past life. And in order to release that belief, we have to kind of go back and find out what happened in that moment in time and integrate it back in. So just naturally, I started doing past life healing. And so I decided to offer it as a standalone session. And when I do it, I usually do 2 to 3 past lives. I track 2 to 3 different past lives in your field that are actively affecting what you're experiencing in life right now. So I think that was a little bit the difference between what she was doing and what I was doing, because she just led me to just I just was remembering anything and not necessarily something that would help me in today.
Right.
It was just like, I remembered being like in the desert and like making pot, but it wasn't helpful to who I am today. So it didn't mean anything. And so what I found was if I narrow down the focus to what is specifically coming up in someone's field today that is connected to a piece of their past life, then we can go back to that past life, remember it, heal it, and bring it back in. Now, how I see past lives energetically, the way I experience someone's past life is I'm always taken to a moment in time. So it's usually a very painful moment. I rarely get to experience the joys of their life. I'm usually taken to a pivotal moment in time, maybe a moment where they were making a decision that changed or altered their path, or maybe it was some kind of deeply trauma.
Yeah.
And so we go back to that space, we witness it. I see often from the perspective of I can see the person I'm working with and what they look like, but then I can feel what they felt. And this is important. The fact that I can feel what they felt in the moment, I know how the lesson they took from it. Because if I'm just witnessing it, I might watch it and be like, oh my God, this is horrible. But if I'm feeling into you and you don't think it's horrible in the moment and you think, well, they deserve this or whatever it is, then now we know the lesson. Now we know what you're bringing from this, or we know how you're interpreting this experience.
Right.
So that's my process. Once we get to that maybe lesson or understanding of what you're experiencing, then we offer a healing. That healing looks in like different things. Clearing contracts and karma and all kinds of stuff. And then I help merge your past life into your current energy field. Why do we do that? What's happening when we are tracking these past lives is that they're already lit up in our field in current reality.
Yeah.
Something is being activated that is remembering the past. And because our energy remembers the past, we often are replicating the pattern in some way. Probably not I never see it nearly as extreme, because usually what they experience in that life was pretty intense. And then it's usually a very mild version of it in this life, but it's still affecting.
Yeah.
What I notice is that people who are getting affected by these things are often struggling deeply to change something about their life or themselves, and they're not able to, because there's no logical way to track what's happened, because it didn't happen in this life.
Okay, can I slow you down?
Yes.
This is so resonant for me because I feel like both personally as well as sometimes with clients, there's just this recurring theme and so many different modalities and attempts to move through and to heal. And I wouldn't use the word clear, but that's what it feels is needed. And I don't have that capacity. When you started, you said, we go to the past life and you keep saying we witness it. When you say we, are you talking about you and your guides or you and the client in front of you? And if it's the client in front of you, are they seeing it with you because you put them into a meditative state, or help flesh that out if you would?
Well, that's such a great question. And so I record all my sessions. I do all my work privately, not with a client, which is a little confusing for people. But
Yeah.
the reason I do that is because I tend to do so much more done in the time period that I can expend. Like I can usually take about an hour to do this work at a time before I can't, it's too much. And when I have a client in front of me and I'm doing the work, I usually do about 30 minutes of work and the rest is them asking questions. So I like to get the most I like to make the most for people. So I do it remotely, but I see the person that I'm working with, energy, watching, witnessing their past life. So I do mean we, as in me and the client, are witnessing this because I see them, I feel them. And the response from people when they listen back is just so beautiful because every single person that has witnessed their past life is like, yes, I know this to be true. Why do I know this to be true? And I said it last time is that when you speak someone's soul to them, you can't deny it. When it's the truth. It speaks to their soul. They know. Um, so and I also describe everything I see. And so my guides are showing me very specific things that will trigger unconscious memories that maybe don't mean anything to me. Like oftentimes I'll be told to describe the color of their hair or some specific thing that they're holding in their hand. And consciously, it won't make any sense to me or the client, but unconsciously, it will open them deep because they know they were there. They remember. There's a level of them that remembers what happened. And so these are like little nuggets of truth that they can relate to, that they can be like, yes, I remember.
Oh my goodness.
And okay.
I was going to say, so when you say their consciousness is with you, like let's say you are doing the remote viewing or, accessing their past life on your own, you're recording it and you're talking through it so they can see it. And it's the sense I'm making of it is there's a part of their consciousness, like their higher consciousness that is with you, but they might be folding laundry and have no awareness in the moment. That's how I'm making sense of this, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly what happens. And then they go back and listen to it in their own time.
Okay.
Which is really beautiful. That gives them space to listen to it again and again, and they listen to it in their own time. And then in that space, what I find is when I'm doing the recording, I'm doing a healing. When so they're receiving an aspect of the healing in real time. When they go back and listen to it, a whole second layer of healing that they receive. It's really beautiful. Sometimes I'll go back and listen to the healing and I get such an intense vibration just from listening to it because there's so much energy weaved through. Because it's not just me, it's all of their guides, it's all this power coming through that message.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really beautiful. And that is how I work through the past life. The added bonus, so okay, so we do this. We do a healing. We unstick. So the way I see it is our energy gets fragmented off, usually around trauma, but there's different reasons why our energy will get fragmented. Imagine being in a car accident, and in that moment, you've heard of it, you kind of leave your body.
Mm-hmm.
So what can happen is it's so horrible, you're terrified, you leave your body, and when your spirit feels safe to come settle back in, maybe not all of it comes back in. Maybe part of it is stuck at that scene of the car accident, scene, that moment in time. And so then every time you go to get into a car, that you feel that vibration of the fear stuck at that car accident, and you're not able to move forward.
Oh
So
my
that's
gosh.
essentially what I'm doing, is kind of gathering those moments in time, but not necessarily from this life, which I do it in this. I'll do moments from this life as well.
Mm-hmm.
But for past life, I focus on the past life. So we'll go to those moments in time and we'll unstick them.
Oh
There are
my
these,
gosh.
it's just looping pattern of energy stuck in
Yeah.
time that kicking up in our field, and I bring them home.
Okay. So for those listeners who have been loyal listeners, they've heard me say this, so bear with me. This really touches me because I'm going to share a little bit of a story of something that happened to me that I'm still struggling with. So I'm 53 right now. When I was 30, I was driving across the Bay Bridge from the East Bay to San Francisco, actually from San Francisco to the East Bay. Suddenly, I had the worst panic attack I've ever had in my entire life and had to pull over at Treasure Island. From that time, it started with bridges, but now it's even highways. I get such extreme panic. And I've gone through so many modalities of therapy. And I've had 2 independent psychic mediums say, when you were in your early 30s, in your most recent life, you were in the most famous bridge collapse in U.S. history, the Silver Bridge collapse connecting, I think, Kentucky to Ohio. And it happened because you were entering that age. And yet I haven't cleared it. It is still with me.
Well, let's work on it. Let's do that.
I know. I know. So it's feeling, it feels like this really debilitating and even embarrassing because I help people with anxiety and I'm like, I can't seem to get past this. It hasn't
Oh,
been cleared. And I keep hearing people say just the knowledge of it is liberating. And I'm like, I have the knowledge and I'm not liberated.
right. That can be true. There are truths to just bringing awareness to stuff can loosen some
Mm-hmm.
experiences and allow you to move on, because one of the biggest hurdles that we go through is resistance. And so by bringing awareness, then you can bring acceptance, and then if you're accepting, you can release the resistance. But that's the case in all. I mean, there are layered points of trauma, and especially past life. And the fact that you said, I think it's a very common thing when people are coaches or healers or what, and they're in this space where they're helping others, when they struggle themselves, it can be embarrassing because you're like, well, why I'm helping others, but why am I struggling? It is
Mm-hmm.
so hard to do your own work. It is so hard. That's why we all need each other. We are
Yes.
meant to work in community. We're meant to help mirror each other. We're meant to help build each other up. It's not a, it's not a hierarchy of like, well, I know everything, and so I'm here to help you. It is,
Exactly.
let's
It's
exchange what we
community.
know. Yes.
Right. Yes, I love that. I love that. And so continue with the clearing because that's what I'm so curious about. And even if you have stories of working with people or however you want to bring
Yeah.
life to past lives.
Um, so one of the biggest things that I noticed, so the first time I did a soul retrieval, that's what we call like the past life. Um, because I'm sure there's different ways to explore past life, but again, I focus on the retrieval aspect of the soul because my goal is to help this life be fabulous. Like, I want people to have a really fun, amazing life. So how can we get that?
Love it.
So I do the soul retrievals. The first time I did a soul retrieval, I didn't even know that's what I was doing. And the person I was working with was like, named it for me. And then that opened up all these doors. I started to see it and understand it. And then I did one for myself. And when I did it for myself, it was interesting because it actually didn't, it took almost like a week for me to fully process it because it wasn't, I was in it, and it's really hard to do your own work.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of it, I felt more whole and sturdy and stable than I've ever experienced in my life. And that has never gone away. It wasn't a temporary wholeness. It's like I completed a piece of myself, and now I am more whole going forward.
Wow.
So with every soul retrieval, you become more whole. You become more full of yourself and filled in with yourself. What happens when we're retrieving that aspect of our soul, it is not just releasing that kind of the trauma and the wound, it's bringing more of our energy back in, which is always great. It's also providing us the lessons that were stuck in that lifetime. I mean, we lived that lifetime and experienced this thing, and then we weren't even getting the lessons from it because it was stuck there. So when we get it back, it allows us to kind of grow in a way that we might not have been able to. Or we would have had to just relive the experiences in this life, which is what we do. We relive the patterns so that we can relearn the lessons since we didn't do it in that life.
Mm-hmm.
But this is kind of a little bit of moves it along faster.
I love that. I love that. I want that. I'm sure people listening are thinking the same. There's so many issues that I feel so intractable, but they're not. And we can't understand the source. And I think we get lost in where was the wounding from my childhood, or why does this seem like it is so intractable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My advice to people is the first thing you always want to work on, if you're doing your own work, you always want to work on acceptance, because that's your first roadblock, right? Learning to accept everything in the moment, really allowing space for things to be. I feel angry. I feel this is happening, whatever it is, because the opposite of acceptance is resistance. And when you resist something, you create blocks. It creates that ripple effect in your field. Acceptance is the first hurdle that you want to work through. And then the second is metabolizing your emotions. It's time to feel. Everyone needs to be feeling their emotions. There's no putting it off till tomorrow. There's no denying, repressing. All of those emotions, that's your work. The more you do that, a lot of people think there's bigger things happening in their world, but really it's just that they're never allowing themselves to feel shame. They're not allowing themselves to feel embarrassed. And so if you start actually doing that emotional work, you're really going to clean up a lot of your stuff. Things are going to start flowing. Things are going to open up.
I want to stay there because I really want to punctuate that point. What I find both in coaching as well as metaphysical conversations, and just sort of in the zeitgeist of metaphysical, like raise your vibration, move into the love, which is wonderful, but you cannot bypass the emotion. Like, we are in sentient form to experience emotion, and that is where a lot of the learning is supposed to take place. But I feel like so many people talk about just move towards the energy of love and light, and not recognizing Adam is here, our producer, but I just gave a talk on what I called the messenger of rage, that it is sacred, that we need to understand anger. We need to process anger. Doesn't mean we're stuck with it, but I love how you say metabolizing it rather than bypassing it, which I think we're all prone to do. Like whatever we resist persists. Don't feel it. It feels horrible.
Yes.
I just want that message to be heard, but I think people are afraid they're going to get stuck there.
The Fully Mindful podcast explores what it is to be fully mindful and present in our everyday lives, uncover our worth, and discover our purposes. I'm Melissa Chareau, the host of The Fully Mindful. I'm a neurodivergent lawyer, mindfulness teacher, and embodiment and breathwork coach. On The Fully Mindful, I interview inspiring creatives, wellness leaders, and social disruptors about how they have discovered their purpose or purposes and live a mindful and connected life. Every other episode, I also offer mindfulness and somatic practices that work for everyday people doing everyday things so that we can thrive and be present for the people and causes we care the most about. Find me at The Fully Mindful on all the places that you listen to your podcasts.
Yeah, I think that everyone feels that fear of getting stuck because what happens is, and I know this feeling because even though I tell my clients again and again that they have to feel things, this is important.
Yeah.
When I know for a fact that when I experience and when a feeling comes up, I have the same feeling that everyone else does, which is, oh, this is uncomfortable. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel it. But sitting with it, what happens is when it starts to get louder, when it starts to feel like this is gonna take me. I remember having this feeling a couple years ago. I had a feeling come up, really deep, painful experience. And my first thought was, oh gosh, if I go down this path, I'm gonna be in this for years. I'm gonna have to like go back to therapy. Like I was just like, oh, I can just feel I'm unlocking something.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I just felt it. I just sat there and felt it. And it got so big, so big, so big, literally lasted a minute. And then it went away. And then on the other side of it, it's never come back. Like never come back. I feel so okay with that feeling. And I'm like, is that a joke? Like, so I'll go back and I'll sit in it and I'll really try to feel it again. And I'm like, where is it? Is it hiding somewhere? It's gone. Because so I think we just think it's just in our head that it's bigger. And then, sometimes we know that there are things that are more complicated. And that's when we work with others to move it.
Yeah.
So, but they're the everyday feelings that we just get so used to just dismissing.
Yeah.
That we can't do anymore. And think of it not just on yourself, but every time you process an emotion, every time you metabolize emotion, every time you sit in the uncomfortableness of it without trying to fix it and change it and repress it and deny it, every time you allow yourself to feel it, it doesn't just help you. It does help you greatly, but it helps everyone around you. It helps your kids, it helps your partners, it helps your coworkers, it helps your friends, it helps your neighbors, it helps everyone, and it helps the entire planet. So if you are someone who wants to do better in this world, that is where you start. That is where you start. You start feeling your emotions.
Bravo. Yeah. Allow it. Yeah. I am 100% on board with you. Okay. I interrupted because that's so important. So continue. That was number 2.
So underneath that, I find that when you have been doing this work and you have been processing your emotions, but you still find that there's these areas that are really stuck, like the clearness of going over a bridge and suddenly being terrified, that you can tell there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when you start to think, okay, there's something more here. And that's where the past life comes in handy. I think everyone benefits from past life work. It's really, I've started to work. I haven't announced it publicly. Well, I guess I'm going to announce it publicly now. I've started to offer just soul retrievals. So just past life healings, like in a cluster. So like 6 together. And so what that would mean is each session, we do 2 to 3 soul retrievals in each session. And then we would do them over the course of like 6 weeks or 6 sessions. So maybe every other week, whatever. but you can buy them in like a series together. And the reason I found that, because I do offer it as part of my package work, but I found that focusing on it specifically, there's two types of clients that benefit greatly from just focusing on past life. Everyone can benefit from it, but there are clients that would benefit, I think it's a more gentler approach. And the two people that I found, clients that I have that have had extreme trauma in their life, especially in formative years. So in their developmental years, if they were abandoned, neglected, abused, all those things, and they have now in current time, have a lot of problems, work, career, relationship, health issues, and all of this stuff is bubbling up. And so when I go to look at their field, it's like a tangled mess. And so my job is to kind of detangle. So I slowly am kind of loosening these threads, but it can be very messy, and it can be very overwhelming healing process for them, because every time we release a thread, they have to process those emotions. And so it can, be quite the journey.
Yeah.
If someone has that. So what I found is that it actually worked better for them to just start in the past lives, because a lot of it is them just replaying in this life things that they haven't, really been able to complete in other lifetimes.
Yeah.
So by doing the past life work first, before we take a look at this life, it starts to already unweave those threads, give them more resources in order to face the things that they experience in this life, and brings them back into their wholeness in a quicker way.
Wow.
So that's one client that I find works well with. And then the other client is someone who has a seemingly easy life, that they have had no real trauma. They've had a beautiful upbringing, yet they have problems in they have the health problems, they have the relationship blocks, they have the career stuff, and you can't figure it out why. There's no real reason why they're struggling in all these ways. And those two are that's the indicator that this is not about what's happening in this life. This is something you've carried over and really opened up into this, and now you're playing it out right now. And so we can work on bringing yourself back to current time so that you can exist in current time. And that's my goal.
That makes so much sense. And I love your goal of supporting people and having the most fabulous lives possible.
Because that's what I want. So I
want too.
Yeah.
That's what everyone wants. That's, And you're like, why am I getting in my own way?
I know. I worked with so many healers and maybe that's just the path that I've been attracted to, but I worked with so many healers that sort of made me feel like, by me wanting really fabulous life, that I was not taking the most spiritual path. And I didn't understand that. And then I started having my guides tell me that our soul doesn't care. Our soul does not care. And I get this message all the time. Our soul doesn't care if we're laying in a gutter shooting up heroin, or if we are on the top of a mountain channeling the gods. Our soul is happy whichever path that we journey, because we're just experiencing life. That's what we're here to experience. So if it doesn't matter which one, why not pick the one that we think is fun? So let's do the best. Let's align with what the qualities of this life that we think are the most fun. And then we can still learn our lessons in that space.
Well, let me slow you down there, because I think that is so fascinating, this idea of the heroin addict in the gutter or the person at the top of the mountain channeling the gods. Okay. So what comes up for me when you say that is, it doesn't matter, because it's here to learn and experience, and everything is valuable. However, my understanding is that there are also soul's contracts, and there's always free will, but that we, before our earthly incarnation, said, okay, here's the blueprint. Here's what I'm here to learn. That's why I'm going to have this relationship with this person, and this is part of my soul family, and I'm going to create these obstacles and challenges, and experiences. And of course, there can be many different parallel experiences depending on free will. So does that mean it's just one of many parallel experiences, one in the gutter, one on the mountaintop? Or I was always thinking that you want to, as much as possible, as you grow and you heal and you become more conscious, to move in the direction of a soul's contract and fidelity to that blueprint.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great question. Okay. So here's why I use that analogy, because there are people whose blueprint is to experience. I mean, you're right about the idea that we come through with this kind of blueprint of what we plan to experience. As we experience this lifetime, the more kind of consciously awakened that we get, the more we can kind of rearrange what that looks like. We can speed it up. We can complete certain things and then move on to the next things. There are levels of our soul that are not ever going to be capable in this life to be on the mountaintop and channel the gods. The only thing that we would probably be able to accomplish is, maybe standing out of the gut, like crawling out of the gutter would be like the accomplishment.
Yeah.
So it isn't like we get to choose if I understand your question, and it's not necessarily that if you're in the gutter, you are choosing to be there. It's more that your soul's experience that's all in which you have like a playground in which you can experience things.
Yeah.
And because of what you have currently learned in your soul lesson.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, let me put it into meta. Go ahead.
So when I say that, I'm often talking to people at a certain level of awareness, and the people that are attracted to maybe listening to this podcast or clients that I work with, they're already in a layer of experience in their souls that they can have more decision in which path they're taking.
Agency.
They have more awareness. They have more soul lessons. So they have fewer gaps in their field that they're working through. And so because of that, you have more of an opportunity to create and cultivate the life that does feel fabulous.
That makes sense. That totally answers my question. Yes. Better than the metaphor I was about to provide. Really, really good. Either from your own experience, meaning you doing your own soul retrieval, which I can imagine, or maybe I can't. I can cognitively get that is really challenging work to do on your own. But either your own or a client's, without giving away their identity in any way. But what are some of the experiences in this work that you've seen that have been really exciting and beautiful that you'd offer to share?
When I first realized that, when I started getting clearer messages about past life, I had a client that wanted to work with me, and I could tell that none of my current offerings really matched what they needed. And I just couldn't figure out why that was. And then one day I realized that they would benefit from they fell into the category of a seemingly good, healthy childhood, but for some reason they have all these things happening in current time and without any explanation of why, and just different kind of blocks in their field. And so I was like, oh, they're going to benefit from this, from doing just past life work. And from the moment we started, every single past life that we've worked with has been so specific to an energy that they currently have. And I'll give one example that was like really interesting. There's been, I think, at least 3. We're currently working together, and there's been at least 3 sessions or 3 soul retrievals that they have, they said that in this life they didn't want children, which is fine. You don't have to have children.
Mhm.
But I sensed there was a block there, and it wasn't about not wanting children. There was something bigger happening. And so even if they didn't want children in this life, I knew that that block was creating congestion in their field in general.
Mm.
And so it's not about convincing them to like want kids or want,
Mhm.
getting them on that path. It's about what is the reasoning that you're deciding this, and how can we shift it and open it up so that, because maybe it's limiting other type of creation in your life, and parenting and birthing and all these kind of things. So I saw very specific ways in which they had lost their children tragically
Mm.
again and again and again. And it just kept happening. And it was very, very hard to watch. And then I saw the moment their soul decided they were never going to have kids again from that point, when in a bout in their past life, in a bout of postpartum depression, that version of them ended their child's life. And it was
Oh.
deeply painful.
Oh my
And
gosh, Christina.
there was so much awareness, even in as it was sort of as it was happening, or maybe after as it happened, of like, I don't deserve to ever have children again. It was such a
Oh.
powerful statement that it went across lifetime. And I was,
Yeah.
oh, you made a vow to never have children because you feel like you can't be trusted.
Yeah.
It was so powerful and so beautiful. And again, it wasn't about trying to get them to like have children in this life. It's more about like, where does that pain come from? Where does that block come from? And let's open it up and get you to experience whatever it is that could come through, that needs to come through, that you're stopping because you have this like blanket regret and
Yes.
shame and pain.
Oh.
And then what I'm also found is, as I'm doing these, sometimes the soul, and so it's not just we're working on healing and retrieving that aspect of your soul. If you're connected to other souls in that scenario, we also work on those souls as well, because I found that they often are in your current life. And so I'll ask, like, if there's like a man and there's like a woman and a man in the room, and I'm working on the woman and this man is here, I'll be like, are you in this person's current life? And it'll be like their husband or their father or a coworker. And so it will help kind of resolve some patterns that are
Conflict or
happening.
uh-huh.
For instance, I had a client who I didn't know at the time of this healing, but um she had gotten pregnant, and when she had gotten pregnant, her brother sort of stopped talking to her. And then he was struggling with his wife on their own fertility journey. And then they ended up having to adopt. And they've just been sort of estranged ever since.
Mm.
And this was a really beautiful experience, because when I went back into the past life, I saw that it was them as brother and sister, but there was a deep loss in at a child, and the brother blamed her. And so when this so we worked on the healing around them in this past life. And as we're working on it, she's in this life feeling inclined to reach out and reconnect to her brother. Because what happens is, it was like dissolving some of those threads of like resentment and anger, and this like kind of weird triangle between having children and not having children, and
Mhm.
loss and all that stuff that got kicked up. So they had a relatively healthy relationship until she got pregnant, and it just like driving over the bridge. It
Yeah.
triggered something. It was a memory of
Right.
an unconscious memory that was
Uh-huh.
being woken up in their field.
Yeah. Like a soul memory that's being
Yes.
activated in this energetic field that goes from lifetime to lifetime. I have a different kind of question. Because as you're telling these stories, and I'm thinking about my lives and my clients and my friends and my family, you know, we come in with these soul families. And what I understand is they can be quite large, quite large. And there's all of this entanglement from these, you know, lifetimes after lifetimes of traumatic experiences that, as I'm understanding you say, just get kind of locked in to the energy field and then impact how we move through our blueprint.
Yeah.
Do your guides have anything to say about when this will become more commonplace to explore? Again, because when you think about the medical model or the therapeutic model, it feels like it's this very narrow lane that we stay in, and yet these blocks persist when so much could be transformed if this were more accepted and practiced.
Yes. I feel like as you're talking, what the feeling that I get from that is that you're speaking from a space of an idealistic idea of like healing the world. And that's not necessarily everyone's agenda.
I know it's not. Damn it.
No. So because of that, it's I don't know if it matters if it's mainstream, because even if it's mainstream, then aspects get diluted. So I think the true answer is we're always going to be here to explore these entanglements.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be in various forms of entanglements, and that's part of the human experience. And it's part of what, I think part of what keeps us coming back into journey this way, because it's so complex. We can learn so much in one lifetime. I mean, just so much more than if we came in as a flower or a fish or a cloud formation. So we learn so much more being human, and we have so much that we can experience. And I don't know. I know for me, the goal would be to move massive amount. Like I'm like you. I want to move. Let's move it all. Let's
do this.
Like a better, a beautiful, more expansive state, and let's just live from that space.
Right.
But I think that's not quite the purpose. So it's not about how fast we can move it or how much we can move. It is about our own unique journey and how we can process what we can in this life. So the answer is maybe there's a world where it moves to more of a a common space, but it feels like it would be diluted like a lot. Like it's like I'm sure there are people in India that were like, yoga should be for everyone.
I totally am tracking.
We gotta like there was some people because it was like very sacred and kept only for certain people, and then suddenly people started to share this knowledge because they were like, wait a second, other people could use this. And then it's clearly like it gets diluted and it's shifted and changed, and so I think that's probably the same.
I get that. And so I'm going to go in a direction that's very much informed by a couple of previous guests. So this may be out of left field, and that's okay. If this is not where you want to go, please let me know. But I've had a couple of guests, Franco Romero and most recently David Hanzel, who are saying there's, at this time collectively, there's more of an awakening to who we are. And in the next 10 years, there's going to be some pretty radical shifts as people enter different states of consciousness, going into more like fifth dimensional and things of that sort. What is your awareness or insight as your guides reveal to you about that?
I would say that I want to believe that to be true. And I would say up until recently, I believe it to be true. And I say that maybe in a week, you'll ask me again and I will believe it to be true.
Mm-hmm.
But this week, for some reason,
Yeah.
and maybe it's all the shifts in the planet or whatever, but I definitely feel that we're really just here to experience our lessons. And I don't know if we're going to like move into this space that, because I remember when I was like 20 years ago, I was told the same thing. And it's by my mentor and like it's happening. It's happening. And there are shifts, but I don't think there has been shifts since in the past 20 years for
Yeah.
sure. But it's not at the speed in which people say. So I think that here's what I know to happen. As we do change our consciousness and we open our consciousness, what happens is the lower level consciousnesses get pushed up against and they get louder. And
Yes.
so it tends to be, in hindsight, will we look back and be like, wow, look at us have evolved? Yes, I believe. In being in it, it might not feel that way. It might feel a little like, oh my gosh, why are things going backwards? Because it really depends on who you're listening to.
It does depend on who you're listening to. And
Yeah.
what's interesting with both of these gentlemen sharing this insight as they're interpreting it from their guides and their experience, they're saying, but not everyone will. Not everyone. Like there are people who they're just going to be lower vibration. And it's not a hierarchy. It's not a good or bad. It's just different paths.
Right. And I find them to be, in the way that I was shown, and I actually just kind of stumbled onto another thought explanation of this too that kind of aligns with it. But the way I've seen it in my healings is that if you're a newer soul, and again, it doesn't matter how old your soul is or how new your soul is. It's just, that's what it is. It's just,
Yes.
it's like being a child and being, 100 years old. You have different experiences.
Yep.
There's no better or worse. It's just different. So being a newer soul, you have more gaps in your field, and the rawness of what that feels like being on this planet at this time with so much access to everything can be very intense. I find that those people tend to they're more likely to be in a cult. They're more likely to be indoctrinated into very strict political thought.
Dogmatic. Yeah.
And yes. And so they kind of fall into that line. And then people who've been like souls who have experienced a lot are not, like, that's not their focus. They're like, they move beyond that. They've learned they have more of their foundation. They don't have those gaps. They're not feeling the rawness of everything. But then they're more focused on their own journey because they know how responsible they are for the world. Whereas these kind of newer souls are just more reactive to the world. And where older souls are a little bit more like they're taking responsibility, but it's more internal. So it's just different journeys.
That was
we're watching
really
it play out.
Yeah, that was really, really well said. I really appreciate that. So we are going into closing out. This has been so interesting. So interesting. And I'm sure that there are people who are dying to learn more about you and check out those packages and look what you offer to help them move past what may be feeling, to use the word I keep coming up with, is those intractable issues that they'd want to move past. How do people reach you?
You can reach me via my website, which is Soul Journey with Christina .com. And although I don't currently offer the past life as a series yet, if you have listened to this and you're like, oh, past lives is for me, just reach out to me. I have a contact. My email is on there, and you can reach out to me and we can create a package for you, or to work directly. So past life healings can be done on their own. They don't have to be done in the whole container work, which I normally work in.
Got it. I love it so much. And so if there's one last thing that you want people to leave feeling more connected to, what would that be? What is a message that you want people to hold on to?
I think that, especially what you brought up towards this end of this session, is just what is the greater outlook on this planet. If you are like me and you want to live in a more peaceful space, then the message that I'm getting from my guides, which is they're hammering it in very hard, so I'll relay it, is that we all have to start doing our emotional work. And the more that we do it, the more we'll see the world in a better light, and the world will catch up. So do your emotional work.
Beautiful. As always, thank you. And again, this will not be the last time we get to see you, once every month, and I look forward to learning from you. Thank you so much.
How I Made It Through is produced and distributed by EIQ Media, LLC. Elevate your emotional IQ with podcasts and content focused on overcoming adversity, leadership, mental health, entrepreneurship, spiritually transformative experiences, and more.